a long time ago, I discovered that enlightenment was more about, at least from my vantage point and a few other people's, from my vantage point, it was about creativity more than being. And I also discovered that the human experience, that the highest human experience of fulfillment, I believe, for most of us, is found when our creative potential is liberated. So that's the idea. How can we liberate our creative potential? What does that have to do with enlightenment? So usually what happens is that the spiritual experience, the awakening experience, the enlightenment experience, spiritual revelation is the discovery of eternity, discovery of infinity, discovery of transcendence, discovery of joy, peace, happiness, ecstasy, liberation, and unimaginable freedom. But what I want to say is that too often I think this most wonderful experience is seen as an end in itself rather than a means to an end. So I've always seen the experience of enlightenment, the awakening to enlightened awareness, as really a means to an end. It's almost as if the energy and intelligence that created the universe, the divine intelligence, through this kind of awakening, was not just implicitly, but if we have the eyes to recognize it, explicitly giving us all an opportunity to participate in a much more profound way in the life we've been given. Too often, if we haven't found inner freedom yet, the human experience feels like it's something that's happening to us. And more often than not, we feel victimized by that position that we're taking consciously or unconsciously. But when we discover the creative potential inherent in life itself, we see that to be alive and to be conscious of the fact that we're alive, and to be conscious and aware of the evolutionary context in which we're alive, we recognize it as a great opportunity. A great opportunity to participate with the creator, the energy and intelligence that created the universe, in this grand and mysterious event called life, consciousness, creativity, and evolution. Even in these unprecedented times, more often than not, too many of us tend to see the spiritual experience as an adaptive methodology, as an adaptive methodology, or a way we can somehow contact our deeper self, realize our deeper self, and find a way to feel better about the challenges of being human. We want to use the potential inherent in awakening to enlightened awareness as a way to make us feel better, as a source of healing and existential relief from insecurity, which is all very reasonable and understandable, but I've always felt that there's more to all this than that. I'm not sure that the point of life is only to be happy. I think maybe the point of life, the point of this experience we're having is, as I said before, is to find ultimate meaning and ultimate purpose and value, highest meaning, highest purpose, and highest value, through finding an absolute reason to commit ourselves to fully being here so we can, in our own small but not completely insignificant way, to make a difference. In the ultimate truth of Vedanta, is that there's only one. In Vedanta, you ask the question, what's the ultimate truth about the nature of reality? The answer is that the ultimate truth is that there is only one and not two. And you are, and I am, and we all are that one without a second. from the most outrageous, unimaginable metaphysical vantage point. So this is getting very far out there on a metaphysical ledge, but that's what enlightenment is all about. From a very far out metaphysical vantage point, from the ultimate, most outrageous vantage point possible, if there's only one, the ultimate truth about the nature of reality, the nature of life and death, is that there's only one and not two. That means you and I, as I said, as I just said, you and I are that one without a second, which means in an evolutionary context that you are the only one there could have been that could have made the choice to create this evolving universe. From a metaphysical vantage point, from the perspective of the ultimate truth that there's only one and not true, that has to be the truth. Of course, I'm not talking about your ego or my ego. I'm not talking about your separate self or the small I, but I'm talking about the big I. Because the big I, the only one that exists, is the only one that could have decided to create this universe, and that's who you really are, and that's who I really am. So what I'm speaking about really is the profound metaphysical breakthrough to the evolutionary context of enlightenment, which means that I'm the creator of the universe. And if I am the creator of the universe, and the creation of the universe is much bigger than my personal life, God forbid, it means that ultimate meaning and ultimate purpose and ultimate value will be found through the discovery and recognition of that fact. We exist, in fact, for the biggest reasons imaginable. And while I'm doing my best to explain this with words intellectually, this can be cognized as a direct realization, as a metaphysical cognition, as a metaphysical recognition that, oh my goodness, I am that, means, in an evolutionary context, I am the energy and intelligence that created the universe. This is my process. When that happens, we awaken to a spiritual feeling of care, of caring. Not just caring about our personal self and our personal feelings and emotions and our personal story, but we begin to care about the whole, the progress of the entire evolutionary process in a way that transcends our ability to understand with the mind. So when I say that spiritual awakening introduces us to countercultural implications, it gets very exciting. So one of the things that happens when we wake up in a profound way is that we begin to recognize in ways that's usually quite shocking and overwhelming that most of us are more or less, have been, and are most of the time, very similar to conditioned robots. And I don't mean that in an unkind way, I'm just trying to be brutally honest. Which means that we discover when we wake up that we are deeply conditioned. We're psychologically profoundly conditioned. And of course, if we begin to do psychological work, we begin to see, oh my God, I have been acting like I've been psychologically programmed. And as long as we're psychologically programmed, it means fundamentally we're not acting from a place of freedom in ourselves, because we're acting in ways that are deeply conditioned. In this way, there's no freedom. And enlightenment is about the experience of inner freedom, radical sovereignty over body, mind, and soul. So we realize that we're psychologically conditioned. We recognize we are emotionally conditioned slaves in many ways, slaves to our feelings, unfree. We begin to recognize how biologically we're so conditioned by biological impulses, so unfree in relationship to our relationship to food, sex, sleep, and so many other things. But as glorious as the experience of awakening is, it's often it's glorious in so many ways, but it's also a rude awakening because it's, oh my goodness. For most of my life, I've been a biological robot, which means I've been so asleep and unaware of how blindly conditioned I've been emotionally, psychologically, biologically, and also culturally. Culture tells us the story of who we are, where we are, why we exist, and how life should be lived. And how many people do you know that really question the infinite and myriad ways in which culture has told us who we are, why we exist, and how life is supposed to exist? This psychological and cultural conditioning process is so deep and profound that most human beings go through a whole life cycle without ever even glimpsing the fact that they don't have any freedom of choice. We're simply playing out the program that we find ourselves in the midst of. So the countercultural implications of spiritual awakening and of the awakening to enlightened awareness become apparent to us is because when we wake up in a profound way, we discover a part of ourselves, the deepest part of ourselves, that is utterly free from conditioning. That's the good news. The deepest part of ourselves is utterly free from conditioning and is inherently liberated already. We don't have to do anything to liberate the deepest part of ourself because its own natural state is freedom itself. So when we wake up, we discover this deepest part of the self that's inherently liberated already. Most of us didn't know about it until we stumbled upon it. And that discovery is the greatest discovery that there is in human life, the discovery of primordial, inherent freedom, the level of the self. So the discovery of the freedom inherent in enlightened awareness, its greatest value is it gives us an opportunity to become a liberated human being. And a liberated human being is someone who has a much greater measure of freedom to make conscious choices. Because a liberated human being is fully aware of how conditioned they are, or very aware. I would not necessarily even fully, but quite aware, very aware of how conditioned we are, emotionally, psychologically, biologically, and culturally. So this awareness of our conscious awareness being trapped in a matrix of layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of conditioning makes it possible for us to begin to see with a measure of clarity and a measure of inner freedom. And the greatest discovery of this kind of awakening is, in this context, is the recognition that I actually can choose, to use mythic language, we could say that God has actually given me and you and all of us the opportunity to choose the kind of person I want to be and the kind of relationship to the human experience that I want to have. That nothing is inherently given. There are no shoulds. Our cultural background and our cultural inheritance is full of shoulds and moral imperatives of all kinds, gross and subtle, that are deep in our souls. But the awakening to enlightened awareness, the profound awakening to enlightened awareness, in that profound awakening, we realize usually with a shock, oh my goodness, I'm not inherently necessarily the person I thought I was, nor do I have to be the person I thought I was, the people that other people believe me to be, or even want me to be. I don't really have to if I don't want to, because in light of this awakening to enlightened awareness, in light of the inherent freedom inherent in the awakening to enlightened awareness, I can choose to be who I want to be. Now, this is very profound, very radical, very outrageous, very big deal. Because for most of us, to be brutally honest, it's easier to remain ignorant and just to give in and allow ourselves lazily to be the conditioned robot we've always been. Because consciously embracing the freedom to make profound choices that enlightened awareness bestows upon us is a challenge. Even if the freedom inherent in enlightened awareness is free and spontaneous and natural and effortless, we're still all sensitive, feeling human beings. So if you truly want to be free, emotionally, psychologically, biologically, and culturally, in a world where most people are so blind to their own conditioning, not just personally, but culturally, you can find yourself very alone. Because if you want to be that free, it means you don't want to just go along with the pack, go along with the crowd. You're really going to want to walk to the beat of a different drum, and that takes guts. Because it means you have to be willing to question everything courageously. What does it mean to be a liberated human being in this crazy environment that we're all in the midst of, in this time between worlds, a little after the beginning of the 21st century? What does it really mean to be a liberated human being now in America, to be in American culture, in Eastern culture? So it's very funny, but I've been living in India for a couple of years, and I've had this experience countless times when I'm teaching and speaking with middle-class Indians and upper middle-class Indians. When they start to awaken, they express so much excitement, so much gratitude. But in each and every case, without exception, they explain how they don't really have much freedom to make liberated choices because the family pressures them to live in accordance with culturally conditioned expectations that they find absolutely overwhelming. In every case, I've never met anybody who's different over here. And I found this so amusing because Mother India is the glorious country that has, in the words of Ken Wilber, has given mankind, according to Ken, not less than 95% of our understanding of human interiority. It discovered the Brahman consciousness. And even 2,500 years after Lord Buddha walked the earth, the majority of people in this extraordinary country are afraid of the profound freedom that enlightenment offers them in the land of enlightenment itself, in the land that gave humanity the discovery of enlightenment. So I have found the same truth to be true ever since I started teaching over 35 years ago. That the awakening process, the spiritual experience of awakening to consciousness of consciousness, and the extraordinary ecstasy of unconditional freedom, and the infinite expanse inherent there that we find there is so absolutely uplifting, liberating, joyful, such a source of unimaginable happiness. But then the question always comes sooner or later after that event. What am I going to do about this revelation? How am I going to respond to this revelation? That's when the rubber meets the road, because that's when we realize how embedded we are in other people's thoughts, and other people's ideas, and other people's beliefs, and other people's shoulds and shouldn'ts, and other people's moral imperatives. And we still find that, awakened or not, we're still human and frail and insecure. So we find ourselves getting frightened about the implications of the unconditional freedom realized in the awakening experience. What shall I do? How shall I respond? Now, the greatest realizers throughout history, most of the time, have been cultural revolutionaries. And they became cultural revolutionaries because of the power of their awakening, the power of the freedom that they realized, and their courageous and willingness to enact that freedom in different ways. So the countercultural implications of enlightenment are profound, because the awakening experience itself, if we don't resist its full implications, will compel us to be exemplars of what's possible for humanity. I don't personally believe that enlightenment is a private event. It might be an internal revelation, but the power of enlightenment only means something if it can be seen, recognized, and understood by others. And if that's going to happen, we have to be willing to demonstrate it and embody it in bold, fearless, and profound ways, if we have the courage to do that. As I was saying, I've never thought that enlightenment was just about feeling better, feeling good, or even feeling great. It's about being free. And freedom, we realize now, is occurring within the context of an evolutionary unfolding. Freedom is an inner experience, but evolution is a participatory event. If the universe is evolving, it means it's not a static process. It means nothing is stuck in place. The evolutionary context means that we're all moving. We're moving and are part of a process that's moving. It's part of an evolutionary ocean of creativity that is moving and becoming more complex, more of what it can be. And are we consciously participating in that creative emergence, the creative context, the creative becoming? Are we consciously participating in it as a free agent? Or are we unconsciously being dragged along through the process, which most people are? So the challenge of enlightenment in an evolutionary context is to awaken to enlightened awareness and the freedom of enlightened awareness. To awaken to the evolutionary context in which the awakening is occurring. And if we can do it, to ultimately be able to participate as consciously as possible in the creative process, as the creative process, as the eyes and ears, heart and mind of the creative process itself, if we can manage it. If we can wake up that much, if we become that conscious, we can become that enlightened to evolutionary enlightenment. And if we can do that, then our relationship to life will be inherently creative. Because it's going to mean that, because now that we have awakened in many deep and profound ways to so many dimensions of our own conditioning and our own blindness, because we've now awakened to the evolutionary impulse and the evolutionary context for human consciousness. We'll be always looking for ways to be more free. We'll always be looking for ways to be more free. And not just to feel more free, but to enact more freedom, more consciousness, more creative potential, and to liberate it. That would become our natural, awakened, and inspired, evolutionarily inspired inspiration. So evolutionary inspired aspiration. So in an evolutionary context, being awake doesn't just mean seeing clearly. That's a big part of it. But it means seeing clearly all the big and small ways in which we can participate in the creative process in such a way as to catalyze evolution itself. Because it seems that feels like when we wake up that the universe is yearning to grow. So when you awaken to evolution as a spiritual event, as a spiritual feeling, as a spiritual knowing, you feel how much the universe is trying to become more conscious, how much it wants to grow, how much more potential there is in this creative unfolding. And then there is this profound yearning which you'll awaken to in yourself, this profound yearning to do whatever you can to facilitate that process. So the countercultural implications of spiritual awakening are profound, because it means that we're no longer here to fit into anybody else's plan. We're no longer here to fit into anybody else's plan, to anybody else's project, to anybody else's theorems. We want to consciously co-create the universe with the energy and intelligence that gave rise to it in the first place. Fearlessly, courageously, ecstatically. So we want to learn to see this word freedom, as I was saying earlier, not just as an inner experience, which it is, but ideally as a fundamental relationship to existence. I don't want to just experience freedom, I want to enact freedom, I want to generate it. I want to, in my own small but not insignificant way, liberate the interior of the universe and also the exterior of the universe if I can, with all of my heart. And when we begin to feel this way, we know unequivocally why we're here, what the ultimate purpose of being a conscious human being is all about. In light of this revelation, the story of the small self, of our ego's journey, of our ego's personal journey, we begin to see it as being secondary, no longer primary, no longer so important. It's almost as if there's two trains in the station. One is personal, one is personal, and the other is cosmic. One is merely the journey of our individual small self, and the other is the journey of the evolution of the interior of the whole universe. Which train would you get on? You can't really do both. Not in the way that I see it. When I say you can't really do both, it's because what is it that what inspiration is it? What value, what inspiration and what values are driving and inspiring the fundamental choices you're making in relationship to your own life, in relationship to money, sex, power, material things, time, space. If the journey is fundamentally one that's personal and ego-bound, your relationship to fundamental choices will be expressing that personal bias. If your choices are more, to use this, sorry, if your choices are more cosmically inspired, the life you live and the way that you live it will be a demonstration of that fact, of that choice. It will be clear that you're no longer fundamentally living a personal life. Doesn't mean you don't have a personal life. We all do, even though I'm not sure what it means. But it means you're living for a higher purpose. And I'm convinced beyond any doubt that it is only through living for the highest purpose that there is that we can realize existential liberation, existential relief from the burden of the why of existence. Because, as the Buddha said, in life there is so much suffering, and a big part of the human experience is emotional and psychological suffering and biological suffering. So he was right. But I have found that the biggest source of relief, existential relief from the truth, from the first noble truth, is the discovery of ultimate meaning, ultimate purpose, and ultimate value. And when you discover the source of ultimate meaning, through awakening to an evolutionary imperative, you're no longer tormented about the why of existence. A lot of very smart, sensitive, thoughtful, intelligent people wonder, in light of how much suffering there is inherent in the life experience, in human life, there's often an existential, philosophical, spiritual struggle with the question of why is this happening? Is this worth it? I'm not so sure what they think. But when we discover this absolute source of meaning and purpose and purposefulness and value, we no longer doubt the fact of existence. We no longer doubt the fact of your own existence. And you'll begin to see all of your experience through the eye of a process perspective, and you'll begin to find yourself liberated from these kind of existential doubts, which is very important for us postmodern souls striving to reach beyond postmodernity to the next cultural stage of evolutionary development. A big gift of the awakening experience is liberation from the why of existence. I know who I am and I know why I'm here. Really? Yes. Sounds arrogant, but it doesn't. But if it's true, it's not arrogant. You're just telling the truth. And this being troubled by the why of existence for sensitive, smart, thoughtful, considerate, introspective people can become a source of enormous psychological and intellectual pain. Because if we're struggling with the why of existence, as I've been saying, underneath the question of the why of existence is usually unexamined existential doubt. And doubt about ultimate reality is the source of ignorance when it comes to enlightenment. The great Ramana Maharshi, the guru of my guru, apparently said, the only difference between enlightenment and non-enlightenment is doubt. And for a smart, sophisticated, educated, postmodern, and even integrally informed human being, transcending doubt about the why of existence is a big deal. A lot of people feel, well, if I have to give up my doubt about the why of existence, you're asking me to give up my discriminating wisdom. And I'm saying, no, I'm not. Discriminating wisdom is essential to live a sane life. But doubt is like metaphysical cancer. And if we want to be free, if we want to have access to the source of enlightened awareness within our souls, this fundamental existential doubt, this metaphysical doubt, has to be relinquished unconditionally, radically, absolutely, and completely. Sooner or later, one day, hopefully soon. That's the only way. There is no other way. Doesn't matter who you are. Doubt about absolute reality is metaphysical cancer. When we're liberated from existential doubt, ultimate existential doubt about the meaning, about the fact of existence, it liberates us at a soul level. Now we're fully here, and we're fully committed to being here. We're not just suffering through the process of being human until the day that we die. But we are fully committed to being here and to doing the best we can, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the whole process. Because we know the answer to the why of existence. And if we can, and if through the way we live our own lives, that we can express the answer to the why of existence with intelligence, clarity, sensitivity, compassion, love, inspiration, philosophical clarity, and spiritual conviction, other people are going to feel it. They're going to feel the source of our inspiration vibrating through us. And we will become like attractors. With people who feel the source of their own sanity vibrating through us, being reflected through us. And everybody wants to be sane, everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to be liberated, everybody wants to know the truth, even if they don't really know it yet. Like attracts like. Self is attracted to itself. So the countercultural implications of spiritual awakening and enlightened awareness, to repeat, come from the realization that, oh my goodness, I had no idea I was a conditioned robot. I had no idea. I thought I was a free, autonomous, sovereign soul making my own choices. Then I woke up and I found out that nothing could have been farther from the truth. I'm not free, I'm not sovereign, I'm not autonomous, and I'm not thinking freely or independently, or even compassionately or big-heartedly. I'm trapped in my own conditioned mind, trapped in my own conditioned emotions, trapped in my fears, trapped in my doubts. So when you wake up from that mind prison, ego prison, soul prison, and are experiencing the inherent freedom of your own true self, like I said a few minutes ago, you will realize that you can choose the kind of person you want to be and the kind of life you want to live. It's all within your own hands. You can be the author of your own life. Isn't that good news? I think it's great news. What could be better? It's tragic that so few of us really feel that we even have a choice. But we do. And that's the good news. And to repeat what I said earlier, it's easier not to choose to be free. The more freedom you choose to embrace, the more freedom you choose to embody, the more freedom you choose to enact. In many ways, the more alone you're going to find yourself. I've always wanted my life to make sense. I can't say I've always made the right choices. I'm an imperfect human just like everyone else is, but I've always wanted my life to make profound sense. I wanted my life to make sense. I wanted my life to be in alignment with my deepest convictions. Because for me, life divorced from deep existential, spiritual, philosophical, and metaphysical convictions doesn't make any sense. So I've always done my best to live in alignment with those convictions, and I feel every day awake to that context and scrutinize the relationship between my life choices and my deepest convictions. It's a big part of what living a conscious life is all about, I believe. The older I get, which means the more I actually grow up, it becomes apparent to me that even the smartest people that I know are just doing their best to figure it out just like I am. Nobody has all the answers. So when as you embrace your own emerging maturity, and you face the fact that there is no big daddy, not only is there no big daddy in the sky, but there's no big daddy here on earth, or mommy, sorry. There's no big daddy or mommy in the sky, there's no big daddy or mommy here on earth either, which means nobody, no matter how brilliant or spiritually enlightened they may be, has it all figured out. Everybody's doing the best they can. Some people, of course, are doing a lot better than others, let's be honest. But it's important to understand, in light of what I've been sharing with you, that nobody has it all figured out. The human experience is complex and challenging. And as we embrace the evolutionary context of the human experience, it becomes even more challenging to figure it all out. So, as we learn to embrace the evolutionary context for our own existence here on Earth, so then the question is, do we have the courage to lean into the leading edges of our own intelligence, of our own judgments, of our own understanding, and try to reach beyond them so we can be our best selves today and tomorrow. Knowing there's no perfect solution, there's no perfect answer, and then nobody's got it all figured out. If we can do that, I think we'll be doing pretty good.